The one thing that everyone agrees on when it comes to cults is that it's impossible to tell if you're in one. Everything just makes sense. The rituals, the teachings, and all of it just blends into a beautiful rhythm that you can't help but dance to. Even if people tell you that there's something off, you just brush it off. I'm very familiar with this subject because a year ago, I was in a cult, and the experience almost killed me. I grew up in a family that put the D in dysfunctional. My parents fought all the time, and my two older sisters were rebellious, drug-addicted high school dropouts. It made for interesting family dinners. As a consequence, I spent most of my time alone. I would play video games, listen to music, and browse the internet. I really liked exploring the fathomless depths of the internet, scrolling through images, videos, and a bunch of other things that caught my interest. I only left my room to go to school, where I could count each second until I could go back home to my computer. I didn't have any friends, so school didn't excite me like it did to other girls my age. So that was pretty much my life. School from Monday to Friday, then I'd come back to my computer. The clicking of the keys on my keyboard, competing with my parents' loud voices in the background. They fought every day except Sunday. Sunday was church day. My parents were devout Catholics and would never miss Mass. Naturally, that meant all of us were dragged to church along with them. Even Anna and Kate. We were the perfect family at church. From looking at us, you'd never guess that my parents had been fighting just the day before, or that Anna and Kate hadn't spent the evening passed out from drinking too much whiskey. "You don't bring your flaws to the house of the Lord," my father would always say. Even though I loved spending time alone, I was lonely. I longed for companionship, for friends who would understand me and wouldn't try to use my family drama against me. I couldn't trust the other kids from school, so I turned internet forums, not the regular kind like Reddit, but the ones on the dark web. I know what you're probably thinking, and you are right. The dark web is dangerous, but I had a good reason for searching there. For the longest time, I have always felt this pit in my soul that can't be filled, a profound emptiness that I can't explain. I felt it instinctively in my being that the people who I'd been able to connect with could only be found on the dark web. Among the many forums I browsed through, one stuck out to me. "I am tired of pretending I'm praying during service. I hate this. I can't wait to move out. The company I work for is very religious. If you don't show up for prayer, say goodbye to any chances of being promoted." I found the form intriguing. I hated being forced to go to church, particularly because my parents were hypocrites. And I realized that so many others had their own bones to pick with religion. Did I hate religion? Did I hate God? Was that where the darkness I felt in my soul came from? The messenger said all our problems were a result of us not speaking clearly to God. We would have meetings every Sunday. Over 40 people connected from all over the country. We used audio only, no video. The messenger would preside over the meetings. His voice was deep and hypnotic, like the slow, steady roll of distant thunder. When he spoke, it felt as if he was reaching to the deepest corners of your mind, soothing every doubt and fear with his calming, reassuring tone. Each word was carefully chosen, delivered with a rhythm that lulled you into a sense of security and trust. It was a voice that commanded attention and obedience, making you feel as if he held the answers to all of life's questions. We need to speak to God. We need to tell him how we feel. Prayer will not reach him. Prayer will not make him listen. But we are the chosen. Through the rituals we shall speak, and we will make him listen. With every meeting, The messenger's teachings sank deeper and deeper into me. My day-to-day life was meaningless. Nothing else mattered except the ritual. Even the fighting at home didn't faze me anymore. My parents didn't matter. My drug-addicted sisters didn't matter. Soon I would be speaking to God. Finally, the day came for the ritual. The waiting had been excruciating, but it was finally over. Tears of joy streamed from my eyes as I opened my window and snuck out into the night. There were already people when I arrived at the meeting place. It was in the backyard of a giant mansion a couple of miles from our home. I had to use the bus to get there. I could see figures encircling a bonfire. All of them were dressed in black robes. There was an unearthly silence in the air, broken only by the crackling of the fire. The air smelled of incense and destiny, like a charged atmosphere before a thunderstorm. I was surprised to see that most of the people there were close to my age, with just a few middle-aged individuals sprinkled among the teens. A girl handed me a robe, and I put it on and joined the others. A few minutes later, the messenger arrived. He was tall, with a scraggly beard and very long hair. His robe was white as snow. "Here we are gathered, brothers and sisters, to send a message, for we are all messengers today." He spoke for about an hour, and we listened. The girl who had given me the robe handed out plastic bottles full of a clear liquid, and we all drank without hesitation. We were past being suspicious. By the time I finished my bottle, my mind was a jumble of discordant thoughts. I felt hot, like a volcano was about to erupt from within me. The messenger's voice had risen, inching towards a crescendo. "Today we say unto God, take back this gift that we never asked for. We reject it, and we reject you." A roar rose unbidden from my lips, and everyone around the fire echoed it. The girl went around again, handing everyone an athame, a ritual knife. This was it, the final stage of our communication with God. A rejection of the gift of life. The heat inside me had intensified. My vision was getting blurry, and my hands were shaking as I clasped the athame. Suddenly, the messenger let out a guttural scream and plunged his athame into his chest. Blood welled from the wound like a spring, darkening his pristine robes. My athame was descending towards my chest when someone tackled me from behind. I don't remember clearly what happened after that, but I remembered my rage. How dare someone stand in the way of my message? It turned out that the FBI had been monitoring our online community for a while. Initially, they assumed it was harmless until they started noticing that it had the trappings of a cult. Everyone says that we got lucky that they found us when they did. If they had been a moment too late, we would have all joined the messenger in ritual suicide. I don't like to think about it. The thought of what I almost did to myself scares me. Therapy can't take that fear away. It goes without saying that I will never visit the dark web again. That summer of 2022, I saw something I wasn't supposed to see, and my life hasn't been the same since. I'm not sure whose idea it was, but both of us were excited to do it. Pete and I had been friends since we were kids. We went everywhere together, and it was rare to see one without the other. The best of friends. When you are 15 years old, the world feels like your oyster. You might be aware of dangers adults talk about, but a thin film of naivety clouds your vision. making it impossible to truly understand or be afraid. That's what led us to the dark web. We knew it was dangerous, but that only fueled our curiosity. "Imagine the numbers the channel would pull," Pete said. "I know, bro. I can see us making millions from this," I responded. Our plan was set. Soon we would be kings of YouTube. Everything was ready. I shook Pete's hand and watched him retreat down the road to his house. We would do it tonight. I rushed through dinner. My parents noticed. "Slow down, Mike. The food isn't going anywhere," my mom said with a smile. "Teenagers," my dad said with a smirk. I polished off the rest of my meatloaf and hurried to my room. Pete was already waiting for me. I video called him on Skype, and he was in his pajamas, sitting in front of his computer. He smiled when he saw me. "Let's get rich!" I grinned back and started the screen share. Our plan was simple: explore the dark web and upload what we found on our fledgling YouTube channel. We knew it would succeed because people are drawn to dangerous things that aren't good for them. At first, we encountered many dead links. Sites didn't stay up forever on the dark web. Sometimes their creators got arrested, or worse. But a few minutes in, and we started seeing what we had come for. The first was a site full of gory crime scene photos. We quickly exited. We didn't want anything that would get our channel banned. The second site we found was called The Playground. There were probably 1,000,000 links, with no explanation for what they were. "You think we should check them out?" I asked Pete. "We should, but I'm worried some of them could be viruses," he responded. "Well, this computer is old. It might as well go out with a bang," I declared, moving the mouse to hover over a link. I clicked it. The screen darkened for a second, and then displayed a video game. Sad Satan. I had heard of it before. Everyone who knew a little about the dark web had. "We're not playing that," Pete said, shaking his head. "But," I began before Pete cut me off. "Nah, man, we are not playing that. It's messed up." I knew arguing was pointless, so reluctantly, I closed the game, thinking it would have made for great content. I picked another link at random on the playground. This one led us to a live video feed. The lighting was very clear, unlike most of the grainy videos you'd expect. It was a dorm room of some kind. The walls were pristine white, and the floor was tile. I could see close to 12 bunk beds, all occupied. There were other people walking around in the room. My jaw dropped. It was the same guy. Mid-20s, a patchy beard, ragged clothes. There was no mistake. Every single person in the room looked the same. Not in a they look so alike way. It was literally the same person, lying in the beds and moving around the room. "What the hell?" Pete exclaimed, echoing my thoughts. This was no case of twins or sextuplets. It was the same guy. I wanted to get a closer look. My heart was beating fast with equal parts excitement and fear. I moved the mouse to enlarge the screen. Abruptly, the feed cut off. My computer went haywire. The music player opened up on its own, blasting a song I'd been listening to earlier. Applications opened and closed on the taskbar, and the Skype call ended, leaving me with a last glimpse of Pete's perplexed face. I saw smoke starting to effuse from the computer, so I quickly unplugged it. It went silent. I stood there, panting. What the hell was happening? Who had that been on the video? I was about to call Pete when my phone started ringing. It was a private number, with the details hidden. "Stay away from the dark web." The voice was menacing, like granite meeting a drill. "We know who you are, and where you are. Stay away, or you'll end up like your friend." The call cut off. A cold entered my bloodstream, and I shivered involuntarily. What did they mean by, "end up like your friend"? I ran downstairs, concerned for Pete, but my heart fell when I realized the door was already locked. My dad had a simple policy. We don't open the door at night once it's locked. I could try to tell him it was an emergency, but I didn't understand what was happening myself. Reluctantly, I went back to my room and called Pete. No answer. I must have tried 1,000 times, but still got no response. I don't know how I managed to fall asleep that night. I was a tight bundle of terror, expecting faceless people to break into my room at any minute. The second I woke up, I headed to Pete's house. I got there in record time and leapt off my bike like a Hollywood stuntman. I banged loudly on the door. What the hell? Pete opened the door. He was fine. I sighed in relief and hugged him. "Hey, dude, what's wrong?" Sorry, man. I thought something had happened to you." "Huh?" He looked at me in confusion. "Yesterday, after that video we saw, they didn't call you? What are you talking about? Yesterday I slept early. I didn't see any video." I looked at Pete in mounting confusion. I could tell he was being genuine and not messing with me, but how could he not remember? At that moment, an unmarked van passed in front of Pete's house. I turned to look. A man in a black suit and sunglasses sat in the shotgun seat. He held his 2 fingers to his head, mimicking a gun, and stared at us as the van passed. "Huh? That's weird," Pete remarked nonchalantly. I stood there, numb. The speed at which they had gotten in touch, Pete's sudden amnesia. Only some really powerful people had those kinds of resources. Powerful people. Like the government. I just watched as the van disappeared into the distance. My car wouldn't start. I turned the key in the ignition a few more times before slamming my fist onto the steering wheel. The car let out a loud honk, and a couple of kids playing in the park adjacent to the parking bay turned to look. It was a nice day out. The sun shining brightly, the air abuzz with the sound of music, laughter, and conversation. The light and beauty of the morning were a sharp contrast to the darkness in my soul. Out of all the days to have car trouble, this was the worst. I only had one shot at this, one chance to make things right, or I would never be able to rest until the day I died. Suddenly, a memory rose unbidden to the surface of my mind. My daughter, running towards me in a bright yellow dress, her pigtails swinging in the summer breeze. "I love you, Daddy!" I could almost hear her soft voice in the car. Feel the warm sensation of her tiny palms against my cheeks. I opened my eyes with an effort, forcing myself to disengage from the memory. Now was the time for action, not reminiscing. I exited the car and retrieved my suitcase from the trunk. Grunting at its weight, I could still make it on time if I caught the next train out. I flagged a taxi and asked the driver to take me to the train station. He tried to make polite conversation, but soon gave up when he realized I was barely responding, my mind too keyed up. It didn't take long to secure a seat on the train. A twinge of worry went through me when they spent a little too much time looking at my suitcase, but that dissipated immediately when they checked it in. The train left the station, bringing me one step closer to my goal. For the past 3 years, I had been scouring the dark web in search of special people. I knew all about the hitmen, the drug deals, and the torture rooms. And while all of it terrified me, what I was looking for was much worse. They called themselves gentlemen, and they liked hurting children. Sure, the dark web was chock full of inappropriate content featuring children, but these guys took it a step further. They were like a secret society whose creed was to hurt the innocent. 3 grueling years of life like an animal, filthy and unkempt, scarfing down fast food as I typed into my computer. The dark web became familiar to me, like the back of my hand. The Tor tab remained perpetually on my taskbar. People stopped talking to me, and I understood them. I had bags under my eyes. I stank to high heaven, and I'm sure I came across as deranged. But I didn't care. I couldn't afford to. Finally, I had done it. I found the gentleman, and just in time, too. Every year, they held a convention of sorts, where each member brought a contribution. They would call themselves Red Drives, and they were just that. Hard drives full of horrific content the gentlemen produced themselves. It was a big event for them. They would get to socialize, share ideas, and explore their macabre interests. After 3 years of painstaking work that eroded pieces of my soul with each day that passed, I knew where the gentleman would be. The train sped through the countryside like a bullet through a green quilt, slicing effortlessly through the fields and forests, its rhythmic clatter a steady heartbeat against the tranquil landscape. I opened my window slightly, letting the wind rush in. I took a deep breath, inhaling the sweet scent of nature. It reminded me of my Cassandra. It was almost full dark when I arrived. The meeting place was a towering Gothic mansion on a verdant estate. There was already someone at the gate, ready to help me with my luggage. I adjusted the straps of my gas mask as he approached. Anonymity was key in spaces such as these. He too wore a ski mask. We walked to the mansion in silence. I followed him into a large hall where more than 30 people were already gathered. All were wearing masks of one design or another. You could almost touch the excitement in the air. Our host stood on a dais and bellowed to get our attention. He was a pudgy man in a black tux and a pighead mask. I found myself a seat and listened to him go through the introductions. He made a long-winded speech about the beauty of our society and the sanctity of our unusual tastes. I tuned him out. The moment he called for our first contributor, I was up. 36 masked face stared at me as I dragged my suitcase to the dais. I have looked for you people for so many years. We, in here, we are all alike. We will go to any lengths to achieve our goals. My voice was slow and steady. The gentleman cheered. If people knew what was about to happen here, they would try to stop it. They would be horrified and disgusted, but I learned a long time ago that it doesn't matter what people think. They cheered again. I opened my suitcase. Let us begin. Hey, what? The host began before he stumbled and fell onto his knees. All around the room, people were toppling out of their chairs. They all stared at me in confusion, their terrified eyes glued to the metal axe I had taken out of my suitcase. You all have been inhaling paralysine from the moment I arrived. It's undetectable, and it works fast. Don't worry. You're not going to pass out. The gas only makes it impossible for you to move. But you'll be fully conscious, and you can feel. It's very important that you can feel. My tone was conversational and light, with no hint at all of the hellish rage that burned at my core. 36 pairs of eyes stared at me in terror from the different angles on the floor, and I grinned. I hefted the axe and went to work. The host tried to wriggle away like a worm. He let out a whoosh of pain when the axe went a bit into his torso. He couldn't scream, but he could feel the pain. My second swing split his skull under the pig mask. Blood flowed in rivulets from his twitching body. I was already moving to the next person. The whole thing must have taken me 30 minutes. When my arms got tired from swinging the axe, I went back to my suitcase and took out 2 curry knives. With these, I moved through the mess of paralyzed gentlemen, slitting their throats like livestock at an abattoir. I felt nothing as the blades bit into their unresisting flesh. I watched, numb, as the floor turned into a crimson lake. I was panting. Over 30 people in one go was no easy feat. But the job wasn't over. I retrieved the 5-liter jerry can of gasoline from my suitcase and started pouring it all over the bodies. I poured some on the huge pile of luggage as well. The gentleman's trove of red drives, their contributions. The police found me standing before the burning mansion, laughing maniacally. I couldn't answer any of their questions. The smell of the burning wood made tears of catharsis drip from my eyes like spring rain on parched earth.